This company does, they do high-tech vision testing of pharmaceutical, the pills we all, the pills I have to take in the morning to come and see you and not be too stressed, they test them. And there's a lot of, it's a very complex vision machine. When I met them, the first thing I said, I don't understand, you test pills like this, and this is the size of a gasoline dispenser? They didn't kick me out of the plant and said, yeah, why do you say that? Is it rare? And they started Lean because they used to do coin testing machines, and the market just went away. And they moved on to pharmaceuticals, and then they had a scare because after a good start, it was really going down. And this is when I accidentally got into that factory, as one does, and says, why is the machine so big? And this is when we started discussing. So this is where it started Lean here. And originally, we didn't worry about, they had a team for the embedded software. They had an Agile team, cool guys, really nice guys, full into their Agile thing and so forth. And we had so many other things to look at in terms of putting some kind of a tag. They sell 20 machines a year, so very complex machine. So we looked at everywhere in the company, but we let these guys alone. And I'm as human as the next guy, in some cases more human than the next guy, so I didn't know anything about Agile. So when we did the Gemba walk, we left the Agile team alone and walked on to other things. But eventually we had to look into it, as I said this morning. So I started looking around what Agile is, and well, this is what I got. Agile is a group of software development methods. You all know this: iterative, incremental development. This is what I've been told about Lean. This is Taishi Ono's original preface, not exactly his words, but the sentiment of Taishi Ono's original preface to the first published document about TPS. Do you guys see the difference? We're just not talking about the same things at all. Simply different intent. So here, the thing is involving all people all the time in problem solving to improve a few things. Here is, and I think Regis said it perfectly, one is an improvement method for the work process. The other is a learning method for the people who do the work. So this really got me thinking into something. The technology is changing the world at the moment. and we realize we have this problem in this company. On the one hand, we have the customer interface, the real customer interface. Think Amazon, if you will. And we have two very different problems. One problem is dealing with the customer interface so that it's fresh, accurate, and keeps interesting. So we have rapid, undefined change all the time in order to be there in contact with customers whose mind changed, whose preference changed. So and there you really need to be agile. But the other part of the problem that Amazon did solve, and maybe eBay as well, as I have to talk more with Michael because that's really interesting, is you have the delivery. And the delivery is it's about being flexible, not so much about being agile. It has to work every day, and perform. So it's a complete different problem. And from what I've seen of Amazon, they're doing some lean stuff, but they're doing very heavy tailorist, structured. And many of the papers you get out of Amazon at the moment, I'm not sure how fun it is to work in an Amazon distribution center. And it doesn't sound like fun. So we come to realize in that company we had two different problems. One is the hyper-reactive customer interface, and the other is the stability of the delivery chain. And actually, part of the discussion with the Lean Startup and all these discussions are interesting because the Lean world, would you agree, we really come from there. We come from legacy systems that you need to just get work. And what is amazing in most companies is the size of the investment in the capital and how little it works because we don't know how to do this. We saw this 10 years ago, but 10 years later, this part of the world is being revolutionized. It's a whole long tail phenomenon, and there's a whole Amazon, all this stuff. So this part of the world is being, and as always, people are trying to seek one-size-fits-all solutions. We are dealing with very different problems. This is Toyota's own expression of lean. This is what they told me 20 years ago when I was doing my PhD research. This is the reason I got into it, because I just fell off my chair when they said, we don't have a roadmap. They were improving a cell every day. They improve. 2 years down the line, it was just the improvement was radical. It meant minus 30% of manufacturing costs, but more importantly, it meant 27% of reduction of cost of the new generation product they were producing. Total cost. It's just amazing. It was radical. And I was doing research. I needed to know. I needed to know, what's the method? What's the roadmap? How do we do this? And they say, we don't have one. We solve problems as they come. I say, come on. You can tell me, I won't publish it, but I just need to know. And they say, no. And one day, one guy really pissed off, Steve Thomas at the time, said, okay, we have one golden rule. We make people before we make parts. And as a sociologist, I fell off my chair. I say, what? So this is the core thing. And again, what is the difference between these two statements? Anyone? Do you see the fundamental difference? We are just not looking at the same thing at all. There's been cross-fertilization of the tools later, and people are not silly, so they blend in their minds the two things. And that's probably a good thing. But just to understand that the starting points are just very different. We're just looking at very different things. The core concept, so there are some things, I mean, Dan has been we have maybe not changed the world, but certainly changed the way people look at things with the lean movement in at least two things. First thing, I think everybody would agree now that big batch is bad. I can't come across any paper that says, let's go back to big batch. Lots of people don't know how to do it still, but big batch is out. So, your victory. Second thing, I think it's a victory we're coming to develop people in problem solving. Do you remember when we were bringing that into the discussion? That must have been 10 years ago, something. I had a small part. I'm very proud that I've done this, and I think we've won that war as well. I don't think anybody's disputing this now. Whether lean startup or agile and so forth, we need to teach people how to problem solve. This fight, I've not given up, but we still haven't got this cross culture. What is built-in quality? We're trying. Built-in quality is how do you link the quality of customer experience to the actual building in the quality at every step. You have to understand that this, in my assessment, I don't know what you'd think, Dan, is probably the hidden part of the iceberg of Toyota's success. You have to understand when you read, Steve mentioned AG Toyota. In his book about his life, he mentions TPS1 in one line, in one paragraph. It was not his problem. What was his problem? Building cars people would buy. That was his problem. What does building quality mean? Technically, in Toyota terms, here's what it is. Our target is to make every customer smile every day. It sounds, ooh, blue sky, warm. No, this is Toyota stuff. This is not warm, fuzzy thinking. This is a genuine target. How do we make customers smiles? Because when they take the product, they go, hey, like it. Which, of course, is not so much of a difficulty in the IT world, because this is exactly the experience you and I have every time we touch an IT product. iOS 7, hey, like it. No? Or is it just me being too old? Now, the interesting thing is how do you bring back this to the supply chain and to every single operator? And to me, this is an absolute criterion to know whether you're talking about lean or you're talking about something probably great, but not lean. Are you talking about the person doing the work? Are you talking about the coder? Are you talking about the operator? And understanding that we don't want to, the way you ruin somebody's day is that they've been working very hard at trying to make money for you, and you come around and you say, what the hell have you done? And that's it. Their day's done. That's it. It's done. And understanding that Toyota didn't try to solve the world's problem. They didn't try to go for well-being. They didn't try to do all these things. They said, let's stop ruining people's day. It's a very narrow objective. And how do you stop ruining people's day? Well, two things. First, when they work, they can tell whether they do okay or not okay work. So they're not caught on and saying, what did you do? Secondly, they understand the sequence of steps so they can move from one step to the other with confidence without being wrong. This is fascinating because this is where we abandon everybody in the company. We have all these massive investments and systems, blah, 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 and staff people and structures, all these things. Costs fortunes. But let's go to the guy who does the work. Anybody rented a car recently? Imagine the systems they have behind car rental. And then what happens to the lady or the guy at the desk? He's abandoned. The train comes, they have a line of 10 people. Then the train goes, there's nobody. What do? They are abandoned. So this is, to me, the core of lean thinking, which is how do we connect this and this? So we were working with these guys and asking ourselves, well, what's the problem? So we did the usual. We went back to voice of customer, and it was painful because when you deal with that kind of machines, it's not easy. And what comes up? Stability, stability, stability. We had entire boards where the service department, we were going with the CEO to the service department. What is the cause of the complaint? Stability, 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 stability. Come back next month, stability, stability. After 2 years, we finally thought, do we have a stability problem? We really took 2 years. Why does it take so long? Because nobody wants to face, that's what you were saying, it's about facing. It's not that we love to face problems we have solutions to. But when we have a problem that we have no clue, I mean, in this case, we just had no idea at all. So this is where we started having difficulties with the Agile team because they were simply not interested in that. So what they had is they had Kanban. You can see that the Kanban is stopped. And it didn't hit me at first, but I suddenly realized everybody recognizes that kind of Kanban. We saw pictures of Kanbans all day yesterday. So we have this priority. We have this to do, in progress, done, da, da, da. No? You see it? And I realized after, I wish could say it was immediate, but it took me a while to realize that this is something I had seen in manufacturing a lot. Kanban was used, would you agree with this? Kanban is used to visualize the workflow? Yes, no? Show me yes. At least you're still awake. Limit work in progress? Yep. Measure and manage flow? Less people? Or are you just getting bored with it? Make process policies explicit? Yeah? Yeah. Use models to recognize improvement opportunity? No? Right. This is not why Taishi Ono invented Kanban. None of this. This is not why we do Miroka, why we do visual management. None of this. Why do we do Kanban? Kanban is a tool of Kaizen. We do Kanban to generate Kaizen. We don't do a lot of Kaizen to have a Kanban to work. Middle management think Kanban is a great tool because it will sort out their flow problems. And it does at first. But that is not why we did. And I click, this is a big fight in the factory shop floor. We do Kanban to take away Kanban cards to generate continuously Kaizen. The point of Kanban is the discipline of learning every time you reduce the batch. That is the point of Kanban in my world. And when we have all of this here, you're probably visualizing the flow of work and doing great things. It's going to work for a couple of years, but then you're stuck because there's nowhere you can go from there. And this doesn't concern the operator. This concerns the middle manager who's happy he can run his group. The other thing we saw was, do you know these? So we have these two things. We have Kanban, we have the Burndown chart. This is great. You can work through that backlog, make progress visible, check progress against prediction. We all agree with this? Cut the scope or not? But then we started asking the lean questions. The lean questions were, remember, are we making the right product? And are we developing people the right way? We started having really uncomfortable discussions with that team, I can tell you. Great book. Do you remember the book with this on the cover? Do you agree? Great book? Yes, great book? Great book? Oh, you're not so sure. You prefer Lean Startup? Great book. But what is it that these guys say on the cover? They say, I'm stuck, I'm too busy, I'm idle, let's do something about it. What are they talking to you about? What kind of improvements? Huh? Flow, process. Is any one of these things that I can't program for shit and I don't know what I'm doing? Is any one of these guys saying, every time I code this, nobody else understands it, so somebody does something else and we have massive rework? Is any one of these guys saying, well, whatever it's do, what does it do to making the product right? Nope. The second part of the question is, the old Toiler diagram is, how do we pull people up the slope of improvement? Standardization, Kaizen. Standardization, Kaizen. Now, I know, I agree with Mr. Force. Be with you. Yes. Language. Were you mentioning language? I agree, this standardization, scary word. Ooh, no, we don't want you to turn you into the Borg. Not everybody's got to be the same. But we need to understand what the hell we do before we start to improve it. So we went back and we said, let's have a real Kanban. A real Kanban is an anti-boss method. We reduce this huge Kanban for a team to individual Kanbans where they can only do 3 things in parallel. Why not 1? Because in many engineering projects, you're doing a bit of work and then you're stuck because somebody else has to do something. You set it off, it has to come back. So you won't have somebody idle. So we've decided arbitrarily that they can have 3 things in parallel. They can run 3 things in parallel. But our vision is only 1 task at a time. Because of the downtime, you have to throw it off, but task by task. And the reason we do this is because Kanban is a tool of Kaizen. Task by task, single piece flow, somebody who mentioned single piece flow, is the only way you can finally go into the quality issues. As long as you have a load of tasks, as long as people open and close the files on their desk and move on, we have no idea. We can't actually look into what they actually do. We just can't go there. So again, we have this machinery of Kanban, and we fail at, not the last mile at this case, but the last inch. We still fail. We still fail at the point where the person touches the work. Now this is very interesting when you start doing this, because what does your middle manager come and say? Yeah, I know your Kanban. You can only have 1 post-it on 1 line. You can have 2 post-it. You can have more than 3 post-its here. So what does your manager say? I need a miracle. Yes, I know you're working on this. This really needs to be done. Please, I know you can do miracles. And this is an anti-boss method. You say, well, if I can, which one of these 3 tasks do you take away? And then suddenly, the middle manager has to make a choice, a decision. Ooh, believe me, you don't become a manager by making decisions, huh? Because somebody could hold you accountable. That won't do. Here's another example. This is not the same company. It's a neighboring company. It's a larger engineering group. And again, you see what this is exactly the same thing. They used to have some system, and now we have lines per people with only 2 spaces. No more piles of open desk on their desk. The overflow is either one way or the other. We're using Kanban as a tool of Kaizen to get close to one-piece flow. And the reason we do that is because we need to develop people by solving problems one by one. And we have the Toiler method, which is visualize activities, Kanban, so we can formulate problems, so we can seek root cause, so we can study countermeasures. This is the basic engine of improvement, but unless we have one-piece flow, we don't know what they do. So what about lead time control? Well, we have another board. Sure, things have to be delivered on time. Fine. So we have a board that says, here are the main projects of the team, and are they going to come on time or not? Sure, we need to handle capacity. We don't use a Kanban for capacity. It's like in the factory, if we use Kanban for capacity in the factory, it doesn't make any sense. We have something that says, are you ahead or late? And we use it for capacity. If we're late everywhere, we ask ourselves a capacity question. So that's pretty simple. You look at it and you can see, is it planned? Is it on time? Is it late with a triangle? Has it failed? Different tool. Then you have a backlog problem. Because you have only 3 lines on the Kanban, what happens to everything that the manager comes up with? Stick it on the backlog. Most of the work we've done there is actually about the backlog. We started studying this backlog. We started thinking that, well, we can't put every little task in the Kanban. We started splitting the conditions, and this is to me is a very good sign you're doing real lean, is when you realize it's not one size fits all, but you have all sorts of different conditions. So there are some jobs that can be done quickly, so many. We only put in the Kanban really the big chunks, the big jobs, But the study of the backlog is really very interesting. Suddenly we visualize something else, what do these people really do? We're still scrumming, because when we go to the backlog, we don't have a plan in terms of decision what is a priority. We still decide at every time we go into the backlog which one is a priority now, so this hasn't changed. But then it gets in the Kanban, and when it's in the pipeline, so again, the user interface is still very open, but when it gets in the pipeline, it's very tough. Which gets us to the real formulate problems. We have, this is the, you'll do this. It's the simplest way to do. Once a day, they have to go through a problem. At first, it's all process problem because that's how they were trained. It took us a year to get us to actually what you don't see in the photo, but what we have here are coding problems. It's actually hard to get coders to actually open up to others, not to, process problems. We don't get a good enough user story or that sort of thing, but to actually saying, when I do the logic of this piece of work, I get this problem, what do I do? So this is what we have here. And the trick is that once a day, the team actually looks at this with the team leader in detail. And hey, these guys started writing standards at code level. They are not procedures. They are detailed ways to do specific jobs. And we start bringing in the real knowledge, which is the tricks of the trade. This is where we finally want to bring the discussion, because this is where we have the discussion by Kaizen. This is where at the level we have the discussion in the factory, which is don't put your hand like this, put your hand like this. This is the spirit of Kaizen. And then you start teaching everybody. So final thing here, which we still haven't got a good way of doing, but once the code is delivered, final column, there you can have as many post-its as you want because people usually don't do it. Have you checked? The code is accepted, so it's good. It's all good. The code is accepted. It is what they were asking. Does it do what they wanted it to do? I love the question. Then you have these dreadful silences. And the user usually say, well, actually, I agree now that you delivered what I asked, but that's not what I. And now finally, we're having the real discussions. So it's all back to understanding value. What are the customer preferences? How good are we satisfying these preferences? We do this customer by customer. We try to visualize that. And it had this, when we got to code level, it had a significant impact. Before, okay, you have to see the human story behind it. There was in this team, there was an older guy. Actually, to me, he was just my age, but for a team of developers, he was ancient. And he never talked when we did the first visits. He was always ahead in his computer. This guy we thought was not talkative at all. He would never say a word. He would come into the office, we asked, leave, never say a word for the word. Now he's the most talkative guy of the lot. Because we discovered that he spent his entire days fixing bugs on release and re-releases, as opposed to doing what he's really good at, which is developing new bits of codes. Because he was the only one clever enough to do fixing bugs, so we were not respecting him. We were driving him into the ground. He just, that was the very interesting story. And not only did that change the complete dynamics of the team, and this is where the question I was asking yesterday, this is when lean really kicks in. It completely changed the vision of the CEO about something fundamental, which is make-buy. So we're really touching the product now. These guys develop their own machines, develop their own architecture, not problems that you'd have, right? And they develop their own stuff, and they spend their entire time dealing with very fast evolving standards and industry, and having to deal with these releases, and they suddenly realized the platform they were in, they had to upgrade. But if they would just portage, how do you say portage in English? If you just port what they had on the new platform, they still port the bugs that just were lost. They didn't know what to do, how to deal with it. And suddenly they went into the real questions, which is, are we really making what we should? Or should we just purchase some things and focus on others? So what we're looking at for the new generation machines is that because of the code was developed, and okay, guys from Agile, I have no experience other than this in Agile, so what I'm going to say is probably going to be outrageously wrong. But our interpretation is because of the Agile methodology, we developed the whole thing integrated the way it grew organically. So the vision code was mixed with the machine control code. Does that make sense? No, it happened. But in the way that you did the runs and the sprints and so forth. There was no thinking about architecture. And I agree that if you do Agile correctly, you probably should think about the architecture first, but this is what happened. So the first thing we now have to do is to separate the actual vision stuff from the machine control stuff. Not easy. Secondly, we realized that in the intervening years, there's a pharma industry standard for the human interface. So we realized we had customer complaints because actually our interface didn't fit the standard. So we reached the obvious conclusion, which is, well, hey, why don't we get the standard interface and keep the upgrades that is coming from the standard interface and start focusing on our core work for coding, which is vision. All right, I have to wrap it up, but this is, to me, this last slide is the last really important lesson. When the detailed learning of the coder has an impact on how the CEO sees his product and make rather large decision on the product. To me, this is the real lean learning loop kicking in. It's really interesting. I'm not going to discuss this much, but this is how do you create the conditions for this to happen? Well, you need a CEO who understands this. You need the CEO who has a clear model of going to the go and see for the game, and what we discussed, this balance between challenging and listening, this balance between teaching and supporting, this balance between teamwork and learning, this balance between results and relationships. And okay, this is what the CEO is learning in Learning Lean. Because the ultimate lesson here, and I think to follow on your slide on Taylorism, we all believe that our role as managers is to have a strategy, then to put in the organization that you need to sustain the strategy, than to put in the systems in order to support their organization. Put it that way. Maybe we don't believe, but who's had a new boss recently? No one? All bosses are changing. Okay, new boss comes in. What does he say? The previous guy's strategy, he hadn't had a clue. His organization, oh, we need to change all that. Come on, I'm going to give you the organization that I had in my previous job I just got fired from, and now you hired me, so we're going to do the same. And you know what's your real problem is? Your information system is crap. So we're going to purchase a new information system. No? Doesn't sound familiar? Is it just in France? Now what they figured out is that we have 20 years of experience, so when did we become our parents? Or put it that way, when did we become the managers we used to hate when we were kids? So in 20 years we figured out this doesn't work always, again, comme ci, comme ça. So we need some sort of involvement program. And when you're buying a really expensive information system, you need a cost-cutting program to pay for it. And that ends up with using the lean tools to do all of that. The lean insight is really different. It's take whatever you have. Take whatever you have. Give yourself hard targets to improve safety, quality, flexibility, productivity. Hard targets. Half the accidents per year. Half the complaints per year. 20% reduction in inventory. Hard targets, no matter what. Use the lean tools to involve everybody every day. Not just the 10 people around you, but every brain, everybody every day. Use the lean tools for this. And this is what will reveal the strategy. The interesting thing in the case in the company that I mentioned is we also started a completely skunkworks separate new project about a radically new machine for the industry. Thank you.